Our founding father was from the United States, the Boston area, and the reason that he came over here to Canada in 1856 was because there was too much risk in the U.S. There was a temperance movement going on, and that eventually became Prohibition in 1920. But the year's 1856, and he came over here. He bought property right here, what we're still sitting on today, and he opened up the distillery in 1858. So that's when the whiskey was born, and he created a new style of whiskey. So here we are in year 157 years later, and so still sold, still popular, and so many homes around the world.
There was an actual house on this site way back when, in the 1890s, and there was a house in a large garden. They were going to tear the house down, and they moved the house. They moved the house further west. They got the house out of the way, and that left a large block of land on the water facing the drive. So I don't think they had too many options as to where they could put it. So it was a get-go to put it right here. Hiram Walker had traveled extensively in Europe, and he'd certainly seen the architecture of Florence and Rome, the Renaissance architecture. When it came time to build an office building here, and there was no central office building prior to this, I think that he settled on Italian Renaissance as a style of architecture that he wanted. He got Mason and Rice from Detroit as architects. Albert Kahn also came on board, who'd traveled in Europe for a whole year, doing sketches of the architecture there. And they sort of got together and decided that this is what they wanted to do here for a central office building. It was above and beyond. It could have been something very simple. I think they wanted it to promote the brand, to promote the company, and to promote themselves on a much larger scale. They settled on a palace in Florence, Italy, called the Pandolfini Palace. And there are photographs of that around. That also was more or less in an urban setting, fairly close to the road. The street facade of this building and the Pandolfini Palace is very, very close. So they pretty well knew what they wanted. They knew how they could place it on the site that they had, and they went with that. The building was constructed between 1892 and 1894. They used a sandstone base. The sandstone was brought in from the U.S. The brick was all custom made. The terracotta was all custom made. And it took a couple of years to complete. There were some setbacks. They had a problem getting some of the materials. Some of the structural steel in this building, there's very little of it, but some of it was brought in from Germany, so that also took time. So it took them quite a while to build the building. They used nothing but the best woods in here, mostly oak, but they did use mahogany and walnut. They used a lot of a variety of marbles, which were brought in from as far away as Egypt for some of the fireplace surrounds. So they sort of went all out. It was more than an office building. In a way, it was more like a fancy residence as opposed to a commercial office building.
The way this building is built, I mean, the walls are a foot thick, the ceilings are a foot and a half thick. It was built to stay, that's for sure. I mean, I built my house 25 years ago, and the settling took the first 5 years. This building, we had to reset the doors and everything. This building, you don't have to reset anything. It's solid, it's made to stay.
The building has been very fortunate in that it survived. A lot of buildings, of course, didn't. It survived, I guess, because the previous owners genuinely cared about the building and they wanted it to survive. In all the years that I've been here, there was never any talk of knocking it down. There were issues with usage and maximizing the building and so on, but there was never any talk of knocking the building down. So that's something that's important.
When I was given the task to turn it into the brand center here back in 2002, I had 6 months from the time the last executive moved out to the time where we opened up the doors to the consumers. And people will say, oh my God, that must have been a daunting task, 6 months. Not really, not really. I mean, the fireplaces, you see this beautiful fireplace behind me, everything was already here. And nothing has ever had to be replaced other than pipes. I mean, pipes and things like that get old, and some electricity. The electrical wiring has all been replaced. But The structure of the building itself is exactly the same as it was in 1894 when it was completed. Right up until 2002, it was used as an office building, and then today we open the doors year-round for consumers and people around the world and share the story of Canadian Club Whisky, the history of our founding father Hiram Walker, how and why he created Canadian Club Whisky, and right up until how popular it is today and how consumers are enjoying it.